let's get the thoughts of one of the, should we say, I'm going to say Nigel Farage acolytes. He may not like that term. Darren Grimes, he's a Reform UK councillor, recently elected in May. He's deputy leader now, get you, of Durham County Council. Good afternoon to you, Darren.
Good afternoon, Julia. Great to be with you.
Great to have you join us. How are you enjoying being Deputy Leader of Durham County Council? What have you done? Have you dealt with the blob at Durham County Council? Are you sorting it all out?
You know, Julia, we've been really busy sorting out what we're going to do to actually audit the expenditure here at Durham County Council. But the only thing the media have wanted to talk to us about is the fact that we had the temerity to take down the identity-obsessed flags of Pride and other foreign flags from the County Hall building itself. I wish I could talk about other topics, Julia, but that seems to be where the fixation is.
Now I want to talk about that. No, but can I just say, were they flown routinely, those flags? Because I mean, the thing is, we often say, well, it's Pride Month. With all due respect, it does appear to be Pride Month every month these days.
Exactly, and that's exactly what we experienced here. You know, the fact of the matter is it was up there because there was some armed forces event. Well, I tell you what, Julia, I don't know about you, but I actually think our armed forces are better represented by flying the national flag and our county flags over flying some flag that's become, I think, better known these days for being associated with trans ideology that's been pretty harmful when it comes to the safeguarding of children.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more on that. Let's talk about Dominic Cummings. Is he the secret advisor, the Machiavellian advisor to Nigel Farage? He says we know, and it's been reported before, that Nigel Farage, your party leader, has met with Dominic Cummings in the past. Dominic Cummings has done an interview with Sky News, and he basically says, look, he has advised Nigel Farage on how to go from what he calls one man and his iPhone and an iPhone, and how he could enter Downing Street. We know that Dominic Cummings is a good campaigner. I mean, we know that Nigel Farage is an amazing campaigner, and the combination of Leave.eu and Vote Leave delivered that Brexit victory, which you were involved in it, which you and I feel so strongly about. Do you think that Dominic Cummings is the right person to advise Nigel Farage?
I would always listen to what Dominic has to say. I think he is a great intellect and someone who's a deep thinker about so many issues. He goes sort of under the radar, a bit like a submarine, for a number of years after each time he's had some prominence or some power. And he did this after the North East Assembly, of course. He won that referendum to actually build a North East Assembly. Then he did it for No to AB. Then he did it with Brexit. So believe me, I listen when Dominic Cummings talks. But I think actually on so many issues, the party is already going in the direction he calls for. The professionalisation has been absolutely immense and intense. Zia Youssef has been working night and day to actually ensure the party is shipshape and has professionals gathered around it. We're seeing that in our councils, 10 councils that have majority reform administrations now. Yeah. So, yeah, I listen to Dominic Cummings. I want to hear what he has to say. But I do think the party is already going in that direction. Well, what I will say, Julia, he was right to say that Kemi Badenoch and the Tories may well have had 200 years too many.
Well, it's interesting because a lot of people think, well, the Tories have always survived, so why wouldn't they always survive and carry on? But he goes, that they may have actually just passed and their moment has gone.
W.H. Smith, Julia.
Do you know what? I've genuinely, the other day, walking down my high street, and the W.H. Smith was closed, and do you know what? I cheered. Absolutely awful, overpriced shop, terrible staff. The only useful thing was they put the post office in it, but terrible, lazy staff, messy shop, massively overpriced. Every time you went in there, someone was trying to make you buy a Terry's chocolate orange or a bar of Dairy Milk. I've only come in for a paper or a birthday card. £4.75 for a piece of card. No wonder they went under. I'm just gutted they're still allowed in airports, where they're selling you a bottle of water for £3 sodding 50.
Yeah. Yeah,
anyway,
absolutely.
This is the thing I feel most strongly about today. I mean, I don't want staff. I don't want good staff. I don't mind bad staff losing their job. I don't want good staff to lose their jobs. But if you're good, you're going to get another job. There's plenty of jobs around. But anyway. But you're right. Just because something's been around forever doesn't mean it will last forever. Now, the thing is, Nigel Farage is a great campaigner. He's a great communicator, and Labour constantly going on, he's a public school boy who wants to privatise the NHS. This isn't going to fly with voters. They're just not interested. They said that about, David Cameron went to Eton. No one cared. Boris Johnson went to Eton. No one cares. Their own most successful party leader was Tony Blair, who went to Fetters College, a posh public school in Scotland. But someone being good at campaigning is not the same as someone being good in office. And as we saw, Boris Johnson, bloody awful when he was actually Prime Minister. And is there an argument that actually Nigel Farage needs to learn the skill? He's got the skills to campaign. He's probably got the skills to win. But has he got the skill to be a good Prime Minister, to put a team together, to get stuff done rather than say things?
I think actually looking at the team he's put together now, as I mentioned, the chairman, Zia Youssef, and Richard, as you know, I love Richard. I've known him for many years, of course, and a host of other people, actually. I think that the team gathered around him, Sarah's great talent, Sarah Pochen, that is. And the fact of the matter is, I think actually already you're starting to see a coalesce of really quite powerful professional characters gathering around Farage now to say that this is a party that's serious about government. You know, with so many people yesterday after that speech he gave in London with the council leaders up and around the country, people were saying, wow, this is a man who's clearly shown intent. He's serious about this. You know, he's probably been known once or twice throughout his career as a political maverick. Well, now he's showing that actually he's a political dynamo and he's going to get serious.
Well, I mean, that was a lovely party political broadcast, Darren, but the reality of some of the numbers adding up, that there wasn't enough scrutiny of what Labour were going to do when they got into office. But I mean, it was said openly again and again and again that their numbers didn't add up. Institute of Fiscal Studies, everyone all pointed that out. But do the reforms numbers add up? I mean, OK, we haven't got a manifesto as such. We call it a contract. But even, you know, well, what happens in the 28 or 29 general elections is going to be very different. But talking about taking everyone, you know, out of paying income tax the first £20,000, utterly unaffordable. You're going to have to put taxes up somewhere else. Where? Allowing more kids, more parents who aren't working or doing, you know, 1 day a week, which doesn't fly for covering your bills, to claim benefit extra universal credit up to £3.5 grand a year for having 3 or 4 or 5 more children. Again, that hasn't even got public support. That's an insane policy. OK, winter fuel allowance back for everybody, including millionaire pensioners. Great, but you're going to have to pay for it. I mean, there's a lot of policies. He's talking a good game. Money here, money there, no problem. Cut your taxes here. But, well, you know, it's got to all add up in the end. And I don't think it does.
Well, there are 2 points there from what you've just said. On that second point around child benefits and actually encouraging people to have more babies, if we don't do this, Julia, then the tax take will decrease like you've never seen before. And the reason for that... No, Darren,
I'm going to stop you.
Hang on.
No, I'm going to stop you because you're talking about something different. We're not talking about child benefit. We're talking about child tax credits. We're talking about extra benefits for people who don't work or are not working even remotely enough to pay their bills, let alone cover everything at all, who are basically on universal credit, having more children. Getting a load of people who aren't working to have a load more children is not going to solve our economic problems. It's not child benefit that he wants to raise.
Yeah, but there are people who may not want to be on universal credit for the rest of their days, and we will actually work as an administration to ensure that people
how does giving them more benefits encourage them to work?
Well, if they have children, Julia, and they have several children, more than 2, for example, I don't think it's fair on the child, for example, to say, well, you know, the only solution here is to send people back to work when they've got 3 kids that they can't afford childcare for and a whole host of other issues.
No. If you're on low income, this is absolutely right. If you're on low income, you're getting your childcare pretty much for free. The absolute solution to people who are needing to get extra benefit because they've got their 3rd or 4th child: A, stop having children you can't afford. That's stopping you working. And B, get a job in the first place, let alone a better job. That the solution to people not working and having more kids is not giving them more money to have more kids. That is not a policy that is going to fly with most voters.
I agree with the first point. Of course, we need to encourage more people to get into work.
Don't encourage them, force them.
Well,
stop giving them free money.
Encourage through policies, like that, like saying that actually the actual ways and rules and means that you have to be tested for should be greater. Of course they should. People are getting far too easy a ride for doing less and less and less, but expecting more and more and more.
Why is your party leader suggesting doing more?
Because when it comes to children, Julia, if we don't increase the number of people having children in this country, we face a civilizational moment.
Darren, this policy won't make a single bit of difference to the number of children who are going to be economically active in this country. That's not. You want to encourage young people who doing their bit, who are working hard, who can't afford. I remember you saying, well, you had to leave London, affording the rent, affording to buy a home, and having a good life. People are paying their university debts. They're paying. They can't afford the rent, let alone to save up for a home. They're not settling down in time. Women are starting to try and have kids at the age of 36. What a surprise! They can only have one, and they can't afford to have a second, as they can't afford a bigger home. That's how you get more kids born. You need to make housing more affordable. People mustn't have university debt. You want people who are working, who are productive, good members of society to have more children, not people who've already got 3 kids sitting on the dole.
Yes, but not everyone, Julia. So, for example, my mother was a recipient of benefits when she had me. She was a single parent, and that was just because she divorced a very nasty man, to be perfectly frank with you. And we should be helping
those women. Well, when did she go back to work? When did she go back to work?
She went back to work once we were old enough and actually able to get childcare. Well, old enough, at the age of being at a school, nursery, whatever it may have been at that time.
She didn't just think she'd have a life on the dole, though, did she?
No, she didn't. But we do need to actually be there for people, because not being on universal credit does not necessarily mean, Julia, that you're, 1, not even in work, or 2, not willing to work. We do need to encourage people. We do need more stick over carrot. I agree with all of that. Totally. You've got no stronger an ally. But we've got to actually focus on what works, and we've got to say, well, actually, it's not worth a blanket approach, because there are people like my mother who had no other choice but to do that. Otherwise, bringing up 3 children on her own would have been absolutely impossible. So, with respect, I do disagree with this blanket sort of assumption.
I'm a big fan of A, most single mums do work, and B, I'm a big fan of making sure that dads pay. And if we need to put them in prison, there are some spaces, surely, if you don't pay for your own kids, I don't sodding well see why I should. No, I'm absolutely serious. And if I'm unemployed, I can't pay for them. Well, then we're going to give you a job, and you're going to turn up, and if you don't, you go to prison. I really think we need to encourage more social responsibility, and I don't think handing out money to people who've had too many kids that they can't afford is a good idea. And I understand the circumstance where someone has left an abusive relationship and they're in a situation where they're now on their own. Parents still have to pay for their kids. I'm sorry, they do. Let's come back onto something else. I want to talk about the drugs issue, because we've got Sadiq Khan, the London mayor. I know you're a huge fan. He's the man who has said basically he can't deal with stabbing, violence against women and girls, all the issues we've got in our great capital city. But he is the police commissioner for London. He says that we should decriminalise cannabis so that possession and smoking cannabis is not a crime. It won't be something the police will get involved in. And part of this is because, although dealing it and buying it and dealing it and growing it will still be a crime. But the argument is, from his every commission he's had into this, is that we've got police who are using smell of cannabis as an excuse to basically stopping and searching young black people, and that is creating community tensions. What do you say to all of that?
Well, Julia, I'm not surprised to hear Sir Sadiq actually call for the decriminalisation of drugs, because you'd have to be on drugs to continue voting for that man, as far as I'm concerned. Look, I would argue that decriminalisation of marijuana has already happened, right? We've heard that from even as far as up here in Durham. We've heard police authorities actually say that it has effectively been decriminalised already. So that's all right then. Shrug your shoulders, let's just forget the law. No, we shouldn't do that. And if someone smells of weed, Julia, I think it's perfectly rational, perfectly fair for the police to say, well, maybe we should check that person's pockets, see if they've got a bundle of marijuana on their person, because they are probably going to have it. So it's not racism, just like stop and search isn't racism, because statistically speaking, the people who are more likely to be stabbed on the streets of London are primarily more amongst the black community. So that's not racism either. I've heard all of these things time and again from Sadiq, because I think he is the ultimate race baiter. That's what this is about. decriminalisation of drugs won't work. It actually leads to people having greater mental health problems, which means a greater burden on the taxpayer for things like benefits that we've just been discussing, Julia. So he's totally mad and he's off his rocker. And the sooner that man is out of office, the better for this great nation.
Doesn't look likely anytime soon. I was just wondering if you agree with me. Again, one of the concerns is you've got a media political class who are very relaxed about drugs. A lot of them do drugs. There's in the world, I mean, the music industry, the TV industry, an awful lot of drugs about, and they're very casual about it because they feel that they haven't got an issue with it. It's not been a problem for them. Probably very relaxed about their kids doing it as well. Don't want their kids criminalised for it. They certainly don't. They want them to be able to get a good job later. But actually, they don't understand how much drugs, including cannabis, does actually impact on kids from poorer communities, on housing estates where drugs are sort of pushed on them from an early age, and how it can damage their lives.
Absolutely. It's not Millie doing coke on Hampstead Heath or something like that. That's actually going to suffer as a consequence. It's going to be the lad hired in a county lines gang to cycle that drugs to and from.
Exactly.
From the dealer to the actual person that's sourcing the stuff. So, yeah, it's not going to have an impact on people like that. And so that's why they don't care about it. I think that is actually a bigotry of class warfare in and of itself. And the Labour Party are meant to be on the side of disadvantaged groups. Well, if they decriminalise drugs and seek to go down this path, in my view, they absolutely aren't. Drugs are bad, Julia. We used to recognise that. I don't know why we've gone so wrong as a nation to actually assume that allowing people to have a free for all of this stuff would be good. It actually turned my stomach to see the drug centres in Glasgow, for example, opened by the NHS, because I can see that coming to a town near you.
Absolutely. Fantastic to talk to you. I still love it. Councillor Darren Grimes, Deputy Leader of Durham County Council, elected by Reform UK. Thank you for that. Claire Pearsall, let's just go back to what you had to say about Nigel Farage and Dominic Cummings and whether or not the numbers add up, and that Reform UK, who are great campaigners, can get that machine together, can professionalise and basically present as a government in waiting.
It's very, very different setting out your stall at an election, campaigning, being very, very successful. You do all that. You love all that stuff. I do love all of that. I mean, I've been there for 21 years. I wouldn't have been anywhere else. It's very different having that to actually then going and running a country. How
important is the machine? There's a lot of praise from Darren Grimes for Zia Youssef, someone who's had a lot of criticism from, say, Rupert Lowe. They've obviously, these two men have been massive egos at loggerheads. We've had Zia Youssef, the Reform chairman, in the studio on a number of occasions. I've always been very impressed with his ability to communicate, and he's got a track record of business. He's basically, they're hiring all these people, they're setting up local campaign offices and things like that. They seem to understand that the role, the role, the party, it's more than just to say one man and his iPhone, as Dominic Cummings has said. But how important does that play a role in not just winning elections, but also getting stuff done when you're in office?
Getting stuff done when you're in office is the really, really difficult bit.
Why?
Because you have to look at the departments that you've got, you have to have the right people heading those departments, you have to have the right MPs in the positions looking after those as ministers, but also with your backbench MPs. It's not just getting into number 10 and then everything works out. It really doesn't.
And how much of it is it battling the civil service blob? Because it seems to me, I'm with Elon Musk and Doge and all that we're in a situation. Again, Dominic Cummings had this experience who was in the education department with Michael Gove. The inability of any government to get anything done because the civil service, they blocked Brexit, they blocked a lot of the reforms that would have made changes. You literally can't get anything done in this country anymore because the first-class, world-class civil service stops you.
There's that, but there's also your own party, and I think people often forget that just because you get into power doesn't mean you bring everybody with you. You have all of a bunch of personalities, new people you don't necessarily know very well. You're battling them, you're battling civil servants.
And a big party has got big different wings, but even a small party will as well, as we've seen with Rupert Lowe and Nigel Farage.
Exactly.
Very interesting. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this.